What? Membrane. Hey, thanks for listening to Change the Membrane, the podcast that brings a fresh, sometimes humorous look at senior care, aging in place. In each episode, we are going to try to chat casually with trailblazers who are transforming how we live and age, making health and wellness more accessible and enjoyable for everyone. Change the Membrane, we always take a lighthearted approach, but at the same time, we're exploring groundbreaking ideas that celebrate the beauty of aging and proving that getting older is something you can look forward to. I am your host, John Soltis. My co-host, Don Chung, is away for the week dealing with exactly why we are all here. He is in Baltimore with his 84-year-old mom, trying to figure out how you do all this 3,500 miles away. So what we deal with on this show hits every single one of us at some point. So we are going to we're going to do an aging in place kind of overview conversation today. We're going to go through a ton of stuff, ton of resources. This is kind of an episode geared towards the families that are taking care of an aging parent, grandparent, for some of us in-laws, and having these conversations early and having a plan and kind of setting things out, it makes this all much easier. But it's a conversation that, is put off a lot. No one wants to really deal with it. So I'm going to kind of go over some tips, some things you should be doing, some things to think about. Because remember, you don't exactly know where this cycle of care is going, right? But you've got to kind of set a goal someplace where you think you're going to end up and just be ready for when everything changes. So that brings us to the first thing, right? So having that family conversation. No one wants to think about it. No one wants to really prepare for it, but it's something that, we have to do. And because it's so easily avoided or pushed down the road, I encourage you to set up a planned family conversation. It's a touchy subject. It's not a topic you bring up, at a holiday meal. You want the whole family present or whoever's going to be, involved, whether it's an online conference call, whether it's face-to-face. The goal of the conversation is to talk about the care needs and the wishes of your parent, grandparent, in-law. It doesn't need to be confrontational, but an open discussion, with their best interest at heart. Where would they like to live? If they can no longer live in their home, how do they intend to pay for care? I mean, the cost of care, we're broadcasting from California, Los Angeles, where care has, become astronomical, whether it's in-home care, personal care, or if it's assisted living, if it's a facility, memory care. So you've got to have these discussions on how are you going to pay for this? How do they feel about their current living situation? Are they confident on their own? Those kind of, conversations. Make sure that the senior, the parent, grandparent, and all of the family is prepared for this conversation and, consider their feelings on the subject before they attend. And you should anticipate any family dynamics, if there's people that are going to be resistant, if there's people that are going to, try to put this off. It should always be productive and positive, always. And then the main questions come, is it in-home care? Is it time for facility? When do you know? So they may be, your parents, grandparents may be really independent today, but situations change. There's a variety of senior care options that fits the needs of people. Before you start your search, let's go over some definitions so you know kind of what all this means. So assisted living, it can be an amazing option for a parent or a senior who can no longer live independently, but may not need constant medical care. They can live in their own apartment, but they're going to have shared meals. They'll have activities. They've got other residents. And a lot of assisted living communities will include transportation, housekeeping, laundry, medication management, which is different from than just reminders. They can actually help manage the medication, putting it in order, making sure it's taken. And then there's the ADLs, which are your activities of daily living, bathing, grooming, getting dressed. So a lot of facilities can help you with all that, but it depends on the level of care. Now, if we're anywhere near where we need a memory care facility, meaning if there's any dementia, if there's any Alzheimer's there, then assisted living may not be the option. You may need a little more heightened level of care. Memory care is a type of assisted living who have either Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. So your parents are going to enjoy the same amenities of assisted living, but with a specially trained staff that can manage kind of those unique changes, that come with memory loss. You're most concerned about the safety of your loved ones, right? These communities are secure because when you're dealing with memory loss, when you're dealing with dementia, wandering is a big issue. So if you've got a senior living independently and you don't have anything in the home, meaning like fall detection systems that come with door sensors, kitchen fire sensors, flood sensors, it can become quite dangerous. So once the level of care kind of starts to escalate, you're not going to be in assisted living any longer because they're not really built for that level of care. You're going to transfer over to like a memory care. So those are facilities. Now, if your parent, grandparent, they really want to age at home, which, the new statistics are 90% of every senior over 65 asked wants to remain home. It's where they've been usually for a huge amount of years. It's probably where they raised their kids, maybe started to spend time with their grandkids. They don't want to leave. It's their biggest asset. At that generation, they're kind of taught, you never touch the house, you never sell it, So if a family caregiver isn't available, meaning the family's not going to be able to be there all the time, then that goes into what's called personal care or in-home care. These are the home care agencies. One of our sponsors, Right at Home, great agency. But in-home care is kind of a flexible option that if your parent wants to stay at home, you can hire a caregiver. They can come as much as you need. Cost is fairly high. But that's the other thing. You really need to analyze and, deal with a good home care agency that can kind of guide you, right? Some people think, I need 200 hours a month of care. And then when you break that down and they realize a caregiver is kind of going to be sitting there with their mom or their dad for an 8-hour stretch, you realize like, wow, that's too much. I just need help with this while I'm at work, maybe some meal prep. So in-home care is a great, great option. It goes from, a 4-hour shift all the way to 24-hour care if you need it. You just want to make sure that you're going with a reputable company, bonded, insured. The caregivers are taken care of by the agency. There's no risk from you letting them in your home. And then there's family caregivers. I mean, there's 17 million family caregivers currently taking care of a loved one as the primary caregiver. And it can be super rewarding, great intentions, but it takes a toll. I mean, it is a lot of emotional and physical and a lot of times financial stress comes with it. So that's why these conversations are great, because you've got to understand the senior's needs, right? If you think about moving your parent into a long-term, or if it's going to be home care, it's important to assess what they need to have the best environment for them. What is going to be the most comfortable and happy for them? And then you've got to think about this care for their lifespan. So again, while it's not possible to predict the type of care your parent will require as they age, it's a good idea to plan for the most extreme circumstances, right? Kind of plan for the worst, hope for the best. It can be really disruptive to the senior, especially if there's memory care issues, to kind of uproot them and then have to transition back because you made the wrong decision. And, one of the reasons, we do this podcast, and one of the reasons I started my company, Project Senior Care, was because most of the time you don't have the benefit of this planning. Something happens, you're thrown into crisis mode, and then all of your decisions are crisis-based. And that's really hard to make a decision when you're up against that kind of stress and that kind of crisis. You need solutions immediately. So as much as you can do ahead of time, even if you're dealing with a parent or a grandparent or an in-law who seems completely fine, one fall can change all that. So you want to have a plan that's going to span kind of, the span of their life or their care life. And basically the goal is just to keep them happy and have them age with dignity and not look at this as kind of the end, but a beginning, right? To live quality of life, not just quantity. And part of that is going to be cultural sensitivity, language. If your mom or your dad has a certain, religious slant that they're comfortable with, if there's a language barrier, if there's a cultural interest that needs to be, every provider in the space is geared towards this. If it's in home care, they'll do their best to make sure that they're culturally sensitive, religious sensitive. Assisted living, same thing. You just want to ask those questions, right? Make sure that you're making the right decisions so that your mom, your dad, they're not uprooted, changed. And that comes from just planning, just, doing the things that you need to do kind of early. And all, with all of this that we're talking about, whether it's a decision about assisted living or in-home care, again, it comes down to a personal preference. It comes down to the family's dynamic. If your parent falls in love with an assisted, living community, it's not what you imagine, but it meets all the requirements, then that's probably where they should be. That's where they'll be the happiest. If they're active, maybe it's a pool that makes a difference at the community. If they're a foodie, it might be, the dinners around the world that they serve. So you've got to kind of involve them in this. And that's one of the things I think all of us that work in this space, sometimes we find ourselves forgetting the person that all of this is about, because usually it's the family making the decisions. But we've got to include them. It's their happiness, right? You always have the choice of caring for them yourself, or you're going to hire someone. That's always what it comes down to. And again, it is unbelievably rewarding. But there are considerations that you need to take into account so that you're consistent. It's the best care for them. If you're working outside of the home, you have a full-time job, you have other family commitments, then family caregiver may not be the solution. I mean, being someone's primary caregiver is a significant life change. So you need to consider the quality of life for both the senior, but also yourself. Are you going to move them in? Can you live together? Will living together strain your relationship? My mother-in-law lives with us. It's not a strain, but it definitely could be, for sure. It's just how well you get along and if it's realistic. Guilt plays a huge part of these decision making process. But you can't let guilt drive a decision that you know isn't realistic. If you know that it's not possible for you to be the caregiver, for you to take anything else on your plate, then guilt or not, you have to consider either the facility or bringing someone in, to do this. And if it is, one of the most logical ways that it happens is that the senior, the mom, the dad, they just move in with you, right? It's the easiest thing. And then you have to, kind of go through that list. Do you have enough space in your home? Is it safe for your parent to walk around? Do you have young kids, toys, those things? Are there stairs to manage? Are you going to need to invest money to make it, safe and accessible? Can you realistically care for any medical concerns or their personal needs, which is that bathing, which is that, that dressing. But again, you can't let guilt guide these decisions. And that's why it's great to have, the whole family involved. You sit down, you make these decisions together, you put together kind of this master plan, and you just kind of get a guide so that you're making logical, not crisis, not guilt decisions. And when you're dealing with either maybe moving your parents closer to you, if the distance is too far, all of these decisions, these moves, it uproots the senior. It disrupts their life. They were probably living, the life they chose, and then overnight, kind of all of those decisions are taken away from them. Their home is uprooted. They might be in a strange place. They may have strangers in their home caring for them. There's depression. There's loneliness. There's isolation. And again, all of these can be battled, can be overcome by a plan, by knowing providers, by getting knowledge and information, which is what we're going to do on this podcast. but keeping their lives as normal as possible, keeping their social connections, it's so important. I mean, it's loneliness and isolation has now medically, scientifically been linked to disease and the advancement of disease. So the New England Medical Journal they actually have a percentage of certain diseases and how they increase based on isolation and loneliness. And again, there is incredible providers and technology out there now that can help a family and a senior stay completely connected to the world, can monitor a fall, can make sure they're safe, even if there's a physical being not there. And sometimes, and it's one of the reasons that I started Project Senior Care, and it's the reason that puzzle pieces are in all of our logo, is now with the cost of care, with the confusion out there of so much information, sometimes getting a plan together for mom or dad, it takes a bunch of different pieces, right? You might need a caregiver for a few hours. Then you've got fall detection in the home just in case. You've got sensors on the doors so they don't wander. There's a sensor on the bed. If they get out of bed in the middle of the night, you know it. So there's tons of things out there that you just need to put into place, into action, and it'll cover all of your needs. But again, it's education, it's planning, it's making decisions ahead of time before that stress, right? And then there's the finance. So the financial is a huge part of this. If the parent or grandparent, were smart enough to get long-term insurance a long time ago, that's going to pay for some of the care. Medicare healthcare does not pay for personal in-home care, right? They pay for nurse visits, if there's wound care, but they do not pay for personal in-home care. So talking about money is always uncomfortable, especially with your parents. But you got to know, what that net worth is, what the retirement savings is, what's the Social Security, pensions, based on the current living, their monthly living expenses, how long is that going to last? Do they have additional funds? Again, do they have that long-term care insurance? You've got to take all of this into account and then figure out if they can even afford some of these options. Some of them may not even be realistic. And this is the perfect time during these discussions where who's going to be given power of attorney? The financial oversight for your parents' accounts. Power of attorney will, authorize that trusted person to manage the finances in the event they can no longer. And you can work with an elder care attorney. If there's trusts involved, you just want to make sure that it's all kind of planned ahead of time. And it takes a lot of money to age now. But you're prepared for those emergencies. And, you'll want to get together like a master folder. And that should have all the important documents you're going to need. You're going to need everything from marriage certificates, financial asset information, military records. If your mom or dad served or grandparent, there's a DD-214, which shows their military service. Now, there are programs through the VA, depending on circumstances, that will pay for care. We deal with a program, Patriots Path program, which is aid and attendance through the VA. Fantastic organization. And they do cover and can start care pretty quickly while you're waiting for the VA to approve that. But all of those records make this all go so much easier. If you've got it, then you want to put all those insurance policies, everything, put it in the safety deposit box. If there's a will, then who's the executor of that will? And that clearly outlines their intentions. It can avoid contention in the family. We also, you should also suggest, a living will with your parents. And, if they haven't taken that step, an advanced directive, that's kind of an illegal expression of what treatment a person would want in a future situation, right? It helps your family clearly understand their medical wishes in the event your parent can no longer communicate. And that is resuscitation guidelines, whether they want dialysis, blood transfusions, palliative care, extraordinary measures. It's best to, get that set now, because again, if you start doing it when it hits, it's really hard to make solid decisions. It really is. Crisis fear has a way of shutting down our ability to hear, understand, digest, and then make a decision. Facing this new phase for your parents, grandparents, it's scary. They're going to be experiencing feelings of loss, uncertainty, and it gets complicated. They may be grieving the loss of a spouse that's causing this, which was the case with my in-law. And we can't kind of belittle their concerns or brush off their fears or their anxieties. It comes out in so many different ways, whether it's anger, stubbornness, you're going to see some depression. And we all just need to be, sensitive to the emotional toll on everyone, on the whole family. So just be patient, supportive of everyone. There's just a lot to this. None of it's good. None of it's easy. But starting early, understanding it all, knowing your options, being able to discuss these options with your parent or grandparent when they're lucid, when they're able to understand, when they're able to help make decisions for their life, and where they're not just kind of put somewhere, it makes a huge, huge difference. And it's confusing. It's hard. There's not a lot of places out there that give you concrete information. They give you 10,000 different links for you to go explore, but no one's out there saying, this is what you need to do. This is the plan. This is where you should go. This is the provider you should talk to. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to make this easy. We want to make this, as good as you can do in the circumstances. And, the families are facing kind of the mortality of your parents, which is weird, and it's, troubling, and it's sad. You may be, the family's probably grieving the loss of their independence. They were most likely your rock. They're who you went to. They're who protected you. And now they're kind of the children. And there's so much guilt and anxiety that comes with that, especially if you have to move a parent to a long-term facility. The emotions can cause families stress, arguments, resentments. I mean, any dynamic of a family is strained. Doesn't matter. But the goal of all this is to always keep the best quality of life for the senior. And families often ignore, these topics because no one wants to face the future. But this discussion, painful, uncomfortable, is important for families to have. If you take time and you organize their estate and you understand your parents' wishes for their future, this preparation will relieve, oh my gosh, so much stress for the entire family. And that includes, the senior that's going through this. There's a ton of resources out there. If it's in-home care that you're looking for, if you're looking, just online, Right at Home is one of our partners. We love them. Rightathome.net. Their number is 831-877-1248. Fantastic. But there's also the Home Care Association of America, who can give you information on every agency. Every state has different licensing, so they may send you to the state you're in. Here in California, we have our own, but it's the HCAOA.org, Home Care Association of America. If you're a family caregiver, you've got the Department of Health Care Services, which is the dhcs.ca.gov. You also have the Department of Health and Human Services, which is hhs.gov. Tons of links on there for family caregivers to do. So the main point of all this is to plan, is to talk, is to discuss, is to find resources, find people that have answers, and then just do the best you can for your loved one. That's it. What's the best outcome for the quality of their life? How do we do that? And how do we do that without kind of destroying the rest of the family? Right? How do we do that without the family straining their marriages, losing contact with their children? So there's so many moving pieces here that need to be managed, but it can be done, and it can be done smoothly with the right planning and the right plan, just put into place. And the earlier it's done, the better, 100%. So you can always go over to projectseniorcare.org, sign up for any resources. There's an ebook for aging in place. There's a ton of links to all of our partners. The podcast will also be on there. But we are here to try to guide, inform, answer, and just keep everybody happy. There's enough strain in all this. We don't want to add to it. So plan ahead, have the conversations, and everything will work out fine. I want to thank you for listening to Change the Membrane, the show that is trying to change the way we look at aging as a positive, not a negative, as the start, not the end. Thank you again. See you soon. This episode is brought to you from Right at Home, Central Orange County, 657-553-3718. I've worked with Dan, who is the owner at Right at Home, Central Orange County, which is in Santa Ana, California, for about 7 years now. Amazing organization. Give them a call if you need help with any personal or companion care. They take the stress away. They have an amazing caregivers. So again, Right at Home in Orange County, California, 657-553-3718. Hey, thanks for listening to Change the Membrane. See you next time.